1, 2, 3, questions for Brenda. So this week's special guest on 5 Questions with Brenda is a fucking brilliant artist called Wardel. I did actually think it was Wardel, but I was completely wrong. Any road, you might not have seen his work, but you might have done. And if you haven't, hopefully you'll see some now when you learn a bit more about him, but his work is very interesting. Welcome, Mark.
Hi, Brenda. Great.
Right, Mark, let's get straight to question 1. So I want you just to close your eyes a little. Just drift back to July the 6th, 1972, when you were probably sorting out your Pickety Witch records and singing Me and You and a Dog Named Boo and stuff like that. Then you just turned round and there on your telly was David Bowie doing Starman for the first time. Now, I wonder if that was a pivotal moment for you, like it seems to be for lots of people seeing that on Top of the Pops. Did you actually see it then, I wonder? And was that when your obsession with David Bowie began?
Great question, actually. Nice to speak to you as well. Thank you for asking me onto your Brand's Home TV chat show. I've never done a chat show before, so I'm super excited. Did I see the 1972 Top of the Pops Starman performance? You know, I can't actually really remember. It was such a long time ago, and that clip has been on so many programs since. Every Bowie documentary, every documentary about Top of the Pops, every documentary about glam rock, it's been on all of them. So trying to think back whether I saw it on the night or not, I don't know. And I tell you why I don't remember, because I was a bit ahead of the game and I actually saw David Bowie and the Spiders from Mars on Lift Off with Ayesha. Lift Off with Ayesha was, it was a kids after school TV program that had pop music on it and games and quizzes and things like that. It was hosted by Ayesha Bruff, a very glamorous lady, and her co-host was a puppet owl called Ollie Beak, I think he was called. I didn't know Bowie was going to be on there. It was just the TV was on, I was home from school, I wasn't really taking that much notice, and all of a sudden on came Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars. Which was amazing, you know. That wasn't the moment that I became obsessed with David Bowie, because I'd already seen pictures of him and I'd already heard Starman on the radio. Actually, how I first heard of him was, back then, my school holidays and weekend job, I had a job on the pier at New Brighton, where I came from, selling rock and seaside tat, basically, you know, buckets and spades and stuff like that, from a stall on the pier. And it was one morning before we got busy, I went to the donut stall to get a cup of tea. And there were 2 teddy boys. While I was waiting for the tea, there were 2 teddy boys that worked on the fair. They were waiting for tea or coffee as well. And one was telling his mate about this outrageous gig that he'd recently been to at the Liverpool Stadium, where the singer was half man, half woman, and wore makeup and spacesuits on stage. Well, my antennas really kicked in and I was like really eavesdropping madly, because I thought, this sounds incredible.
Oh, my ears would have picked up at the thought of that. It sounds amazing.
I listened in long enough to hear that the name of the performer was David Bowie. Now, I'd heard Starman on the radio, but I didn't know anything about the singer. I didn't know what he looked like or anything like that. So I thought, I'm going to have to check this out. So that lunchtime, I went up to the local newsagent and I bought a load of girly pop magazines, things like Jackie and Pop Swap and stuff like that, because they were all full of Ziggy Stardust pin-up posters. And I had just never seen anybody who looked so amazing and so cool in my entire life. And that was it. My life changed on that day. It really did. So yeah, I don't know whether I saw the Starman performance on Top of the Pops, but yeah, I definitely saw it on Lift Off with Ayesha.
Right, question 2, Mark. Right, so you grew up on Merseyside, which really is quite like Hull, where I live. You know, it's the opposite side of the country. You could almost draw a line, couldn't you? You had the Beatles, we had the Spiders from Mars. Rachel actually thought she saw David Bowie once going into Skelton's bakery to get a custard slice, but no one believed her. Anyway, what made you decide to move from Merseyside and down to London? Was it just a case of always just had to get out where you were brought up, or you just saw the lights and the glamour of London?
That's another good one. I loved it up in New Brighton in Merseyside. It was a great place to grow up as a teenager. I had summer holiday jobs in the arcades on the pier. I'd hang out in the arcade next to the jukebox listening to all the amazing glam rock. This was the early 70s. It was a great place to grow up, but by the time I'd finished art school in 78, I knew that I wanted to be an artist. And I was kind of, as a massive fan of Bowie and Roxy music, I was hankering really for that kind of lifestyle of glamour and panache that they espoused, and I'd seen the gossip column with Brian Ferry, at all these amazing London parties with these glamorous people. And I wanted to be at the centre of things, and back then really London was the only place to be if you wanted to go be at the centre of things. It's very different now, you can do it anywhere, glamour is everywhere. But back then you had to be in London. So I hopped on a National Express coach because I couldn't afford the train, came down to London, and my first day in London was seeing David Bowie at Earl's Court in 1978 on the Isola 2 tour, which was absolutely incredible. And I've been here ever since. I thought I better get a job, so I called in with my portfolio to a couple of Soho design studios. I got turned away from the first two. I think it was the third one. I got taken on as a junior illustrator. And my first job was designing the packaging for a hokey sort of product for sex shops called Love Boost capsules, which were supposedly some product to enhance your virility or some nonsense like that. Obviously complete rubbish. But I loved it. I thought I'd been in London 5 minutes. I've got a job in a Soho design studio. I'm designing a packaging that's going to be in sex shops in Soho. This is the life of panache and glamour that I'm heading for. And actually, how I kind of fantasized my life would be with the people that I went on to meet and the lifestyle that I lived down here in those incredible times, it actually all happened exactly as I thought it would. So, while I loved it up in Merseyside, I also love London. It's a fantastic city. I still love it now. So that's the answer to question 2.
So, Mark, question 3. So your art style is very distinctive. It reminds me a little of the paintings used on the cover of Interview magazine, the Andy Warhol thing. I just wondered, were you inspired by that? And also, it kind of marries, doesn't it, with your interest in celebrities? I mean, there might be people you know, because often pictures that you paint include yourself when you were younger, which I think is very interesting. So I wonder if you'd like to tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's very perceptive actually, Brenda. I was massively influenced by the Andy Warhol interview covers. I remember seeing them in the 70s, and I loved the way that he was kind of portraying a kind of Warhol-esque thing, but it wasn't the same style as Andy Warhol. It was a bit less flat. It was a bit more airbrushy, and I like the sort of textures. I've always liked that kind of flash, kind of airbrushy sort of texture thing that's going on. So yes, I was inspired by Richard Bernstein quite strongly, and a lot of people actually who know about such things, such as yourself, obviously catch on to that. As for celebrities, I'm not really interested in fame or celebrities that much as people might think. Especially not now in the days of reality TV where it's all so devalued. A lot of the famous people, or quite a few of the famous people I've painted or depicted, I did it before they were famous. People like the Blitz Club set, Boy George, Steve Strange, people like that. I painted them quite a while before they were famous, and I painted them, I was interested in them because, like me, they were obsessed with the whole David Bowie thing of being able to reinvent yourself as amazing characters with use of costumes and makeup to come up with these incredible characters and to find characters within themselves outside of perhaps what society would expect. And they created these characters in a way so that they could function inside a society that they had created. And I found that incredibly fascinating. And that's why I wanted to paint them. It wasn't really anything to do with fame at all. And then luckily I went on to meet more than a few famous people. You know, I've been very lucky. You know, I met and chatted to David Bowie, Andy Warhol, Liz Taylor, Grace Jones, all these people. A few of them commissioned me to do stuff. Some of them bought stuff off me, like David Bowie did. And I've always had I prefer to paint people that I have a personal connection with. I don't really just that often ever paint someone just because they're famous. If they're famous and they look absolutely incredible, which a lot of famous people do, then I might do. But that's not my raison d'etre for that. Putting myself in some of the pictures. Yeah, I don't know. People are always saying you should do a self-portrait. And, you know, I don't know that great anymore. But actually back in the kind of Blitz era, you know, I have to say, you know, I think I did look quite, you know, I put quite a good look together. You know, it was looking back on the photos, they're strong looks. You know, I'm not saying I was great looking, but they were strong looks, you know, with the bleached up hair and the Anthony Price suits and everything. So occasionally when I'm doing paintings, which I am actually focusing on a lot of my Polaroids and photographs from that era, occasionally I have put myself into the picture, either because I've been in the photograph, or it's just been a photograph of me on my own. I haven't actually inserted myself into any scenarios that I wasn't in, but actually you just given me an idea, and I think I might insert myself into a couple of scenarios, if you know what I mean.
Right, Matt. One of the things you're most well known for are these fucking brilliant David Bowie masks that you do. They look hyper realistic. They're amazing, and they actually come from the mould of the mask that he had made when he was in that documentary Cracked Actor. The bit when he was going tissues for my eyes and that we was pissing ourselves, me and Rachel. We used to say every time we saw a box of Kleenex. And he wrote, my favourite one, actually, it's quite simple, but it's the one with blood coming from the nose, the Lazarus one. I love it. And now I just wondered, how did you get hold of that mask in the first place? And, you know, what makes you continue with them? Because they're so good, all of them.
Yeah, the David Bowie masks, yeah. I mean, I never set out to be a mask maker. That all happened completely by accident. I was obsessed with the programme Cracked Actor since I first saw it broadcast in January 1975. You know, that was another life-changing moment. I thought it was Bowie's coolest phase, much cooler and more mysterious even than Ziggy Stardust. And when I saw him having the cast taken of his face, it made such a huge impression on me. I never forgot it. And I managed to get a VHS tape of it from a girl who worked for a TV company in 1979. So I watched it hundreds of times. And always the idea of this mask, because really my work is about masks. It's really about people who create masks in which to portray themselves. So it resonated with me. And then a friend of mine who was a bigwig at EMI Records in the late 80s, early 90s, he managed to get hold of a cast from America of Bowie's face that had been made in 1974. You know, it was from the Cracked Actor period, which he lent to me to make a mould from. And so what I did, I resculpted it a bit and made a mould, and I started making them really just for friends. I had no idea to sell them or anything like that. It was just my obsession working its way out. And the big David Bowie Is exhibition at the V&A somehow heard about my masks and called me in to their office to show them an example, which they really liked. And they said to me that they would probably order 50 to sell in the shop, which I couldn't believe. And I was terrified because I didn't really know how to make them properly. I'd only ever made one or two, and I thought, oh, I'm going to have to make 50. So they said they were going to, they would email me the official order later that night. So I was checking my emails, and later that night at about 9 o'clock, the order came through for 300 of these masks. So that was oh God, that was kind of crazy. Everything went crazy. I spent, several months working from 6 in the morning till midnight, making these masks. But it was a great thing to do, and it was. I really loved it, and the great thing was that David Bowie knew about it, and obviously gave it his blessing. And then, after the exhibition finished, his office contacted me, and they bought 2 of the masks for his official archive in New York, which was, just the icing on the cake, really. And it just kind of snowballed from there. It took on a momentum of its own, and people just kept asking me to make them, and people wanting them. Everybody loves David Bowie's face now. I mean, everybody loves David Bowie's face. And because I studied the makeup techniques of Pierre Laroche, who did all the famous Bowie makeups like Aladdin Sane and everything, I'm quite able to actually reproduce quite well those looks, and having a version of his face to do that on is amazing. But yeah, sometimes, I kind of think I don't want to make any more masks, but I'm still obsessed with David Bowie's face, so it just seems to go on and on, which is great, and I get amazing feedback from people who collect these or who've bought them. So by complete accident, I became a famous David Bowie mask maker. That's part of my story, I guess.
It's question 5 already. I can't believe it, can you? Anyway, I like to do what I normally do with my guests. So again, just close your eyes, and I want to picture yourself peering through a window, and what you're looking at is that little boy that's you as a boy, and he's packing away his action transfers and looking at the Grattan's catalogue, just wishing he could get some clackers for Christmas or something like that. If you could tap on the window and he'd rush to the window and open it wide, and you could say to him something wise about his future, what would you tell that boy?
Me as a boy, ooh, dear, yeah, thinking back. Yeah, we all used to look at the Grattan's catalogue, didn't we? I think the underwear pages, basically, that was our porn back then, really, was the Grattan's catalogue underwear page. So yeah, I'm a boy, I'm looking at the Grattan's catalogue. If I could come along and say something to my young self, I would say, don't give your work away. Don't do anything for free, because people won't respect you. It will never lead to anything. Only by putting a value on your work and getting a good price for it will people respect you, and you'll be taken seriously. I would also say, keep your diaries. Don't throw them away. Keep a proper diary, because when you get to my age, you can't remember half this shit that happened, or dates. I do interviews about people that, pop stars that I knew in the 80s, like David Sylvian and whatever, and people ask me things about dates or what people's flats were like and stuff like that. And when you're living through it, you're not really taking all these things, notice of all this stuff. So yes, Mark Wardel, keep a diary. Anyway, thanks very much, Brenda. It's been great. And yeah, you're right, actually. It's gone so quickly, I think just because you've had such great questions, it's been easy to do and a blast, and I've really enjoyed it. So thank you. Bye.
Right, Mark, that was fucking brilliant. I'm so chuffed you came on. I genuinely am. Thrilled. Doreen told me to say hi to you. She knows that you follow her with the gymkhana stroke dressage career in Eastern Europe quite closely. So she appreciates it, and she appreciates all the letters and flowers and that you send her on a regular basis. So thanks again for that, and thank you so much for doing this interview. See you next week. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to go to my Instagram, Brenda_the_shapeshifter. Bye.